Good afternoon, everyone. Atalee, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correct. Stacy Brown is a mortgage agent with Dominion Lending Centuries Bedrock Financial, as well as a private capital professional dealing representative with Vitus Capital Management. Stacy attended the University of Windsor to pursue a degree in political science. She has held several positions of some of the leading banking institutions in Canada for the past 20 years. Stacy's passion has been teaching financial literacy seminars and courses for the past 9 years. She's the past chair of the Financial Literacy Committee for the Canada Association of Urban Financial Professionals. She was awarded the Outstanding Member in 2015 for brokering a partnership with CAUFP Financial Literacy Committee and Toronto District School Board, helping to develop a financial literacy course to be taught in high schools. Stacy has also developed 2 sold-out financial literacy seminar series, Financially Fit Boot Camp and Women United. Okay. Her career on education, young adults and kids in at-risk communities and minorities, she's become more financially literate, to help them learn financial literacy skills, to have a healthy relationship towards finances, and to put them on the right path towards a successful financial future. This really hit home for Stacy when trying to educate her then 5-year-old daughter, Nikki. Her daughter wanted to be a Disney princess, Princess Tiana. Stacy then suggested to her daughter to be more than a Disney princess, to actually own a piece of Disney by buying Disney stock for her birthday. Realizing how challenging it is trying to teach stocks and the stock market to a 5-year-old, this led Stacy to begin to focus her attention on training kids to learn financial literacy skills, particularly since this was not being taught in primary elementary schools, grades K through 8. Stacy has published a kids' financial literacy book, co-authored with her daughter, Mickey, titled I Will Own a Castle. The children's book helped kids learn the value and skills of saving and investing, and to start a healthy relationship towards financial literacy. Stacy created a program called Kiddynomics, which focuses on BIPOC kids to help them learn financial literacy skills, featuring experts in the financial field that represent the BIPOC community. And that's Stacy Brown.
Thank you so much. I forgot how long that bio is.
I'm sorry, I jumped around a little bit because,
I forgot about that. Anyways, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for having me on, Donovan. Thank you so much for the invite to speak to your members today. So happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm in Toronto, Canada. Has anybody ever been to Canada or Toronto? Yeah? Yay! Toronto in the house. Well, over here today is a somewhat sunny day. I'm hoping that the weather stays nice because my daughter has tennis tonight, tennis practice. So if it rains, there's no practice. So I'm hoping that the weather stays good today. But I'm super excited to speak with you guys. So today I love to talk about financial literacy and the importance of financial literacy, but especially the importance of financial literacy for kids. And this has always been a topic that I find that we never really talked about, especially in my household. And growing up, I came from an immigrant background. I'm Jamaican, and we moved to Canada when I was very little. And, you know, I found that other immigrants, you know, growing up, financial literacy wasn't a thing in our household, right? Like we didn't, like my parents were just about, you know, making sure that there's food on the table. I went to school, there's clothes on my back. There was never talk about credit cards, and there was never talk about how to save, and there was never talk about budgeting. And we didn't talk about those things, right? Because my mom especially was, you know, focused on providing me the essentials as as she could, right? And so I don't blame my mom for not talking to me about financial literacy, but what I talk about is, you can't teach financial literacy if you don't know it yourself. And that has been a major challenge in a lot of reasons why people don't talk about financial literacy to their young ones, right? You can't teach what you don't know. And that's where we help fill the gap. But what I do like to say about financial literacy in my quote is, I believe that financial literacy is a human rights issue. And when we put it in that context, that financial literacy is a human rights issue. It should be part of the UN. It should be a course in the UN. This should be something that is put out there for every country, because financial literacy affects every single human being on the planet. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic background. It doesn't matter your race. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter. Financial literacy affects every part of your life. And I'll go into why I believe that and why it is true. But if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute. And because this is actually more of a discussion than anything that I'm necessarily going to be teaching. Do I have access to sharing my screen, Donovan? Do I have access to that? Let me just see.
Yes, you do.
I think I do. Okay. So I'm going to share with you just some stats about us here in Canada. I know that you guys are in the US, but I want to also show you how much financial literacy is important, no matter where you live, no matter what country you come from. It doesn't matter, if you were raised wealthy in a wealthy, more well-to-do family or not, because especially those kids that were raised in well-to-do families, they may never have been taught financial literacy, even though they were given, they had access to a lot of resources. That is very true. So I want to talk to you about Canada. So we have, Canada, although Canada is a very big country, landmass wise, we are actually very small when it comes to population. We have less than 40 million people in Canada. All of Canada. Some states have that in just their state, right? Because America has over 350 million people. Is it something like that, or 250? I forget your stats, but Canada only has about 40 million people. So we are, when we talk about population wise, we are a much smaller country population wise, but we have in Canada, 4.9 million Canadians live in poverty. That's 1 in every 7 people in Canada live in poverty. And that is huge, because for a country as small as we are, but as large as we are, when you think about 1 in 7 people, how many people are on this phone call today? There's 14 people. So two out of these 14 people would be living in poverty. That is huge. But I want to talk about how does this really affect us, especially when it comes to our kids. So in Canada, and these numbers are a little bit skewed now because we've gone through the pandemic, and so these have just actually exponentially increased these numbers because of what we've gone through living through the pandemic in the last couple of years. But 3 million households, Canadian households, live precariously. Living in unaffordable, below standards, and or overcrowded housing. Youth ages 16 to 24 make up about 20% of the homeless population. I'm not sure about the homeless population there in the States, but that's huge for us here in Canada. Child poverty. 1.3 million children live in conditions of poverty. That's 1 in every 5 kids live in poverty. More than 1/3 of food bank users are children. 1 in 7 kids that are in shelters, or people that are in shelters, are children. That's huge for us. We keep on talking about food insecurity. I'm not sure if you got, if it is on the news a lot for us over here. And now food insecurity has exponentially increased because of all the different things that's happening around the world. But for us over here, we have 4 million people in Canada experience food insecurity. 1 in 8 Canadian households struggling to put food on the table, having to choose between paying bills or food. That is so big for us over here. That number is so large because remember, our population is less than 40 million people here in Canada. How does poverty affect our healthcare? Now, our healthcare is a little bit different over than in the States because healthcare, although they say it's free, we do pay for it in our taxes, so that is not essentially free. But you don't have to pay to go to the doctor. But in Canada, 1 in 10 Canadians cannot afford to fill their medical prescriptions because you still have to pay for prescriptions over here. And when we look at marginalized communities, 21% of single mothers in Canada raise their children living in poverty. 1 in 5 racialized families live in poverty in Canada, as opposed to 1 in 20 in non-racialized communities. Racialized women living in poverty were almost twice as likely to work in manufacturing jobs than other women living in poverty. Overall, racialized women earn 32% less at work. 4 out of every 5 women in prison are there for poverty-related crimes. So when we look at some of these facts, right, and we talk about the lack of financial literacy, because if you were growing up, think about when you were little, and when you were growing up, and you knew the things that you knew now about your finances, resources, would you have made different decisions, right? Would you have gone a different route with certain things? But because you had the lack of financial literacy, how did that affect your life as you got older? Let's talk about school. Student debt takes up to 15 years to pay off, delaying crucial life events. I know that there's talk about in the States that Biden may be, excusing your first $10,000 worth of student loan debt, which is amazing. But how much does that delay your life choices and buying a house, saving for your future, going traveling, doing other things, because you're saddled down with student loan debt? Over here, 1 in 7 insolvencies is student loan debt. 63% of student insolvencies debtors are women in Canada. That's huge. These numbers, to me, show how much financial literacy just contributes to your overall life choices. When we talk about mental health, debt and mental health they coincide so closely. With debt, 28% suffer from depression. 18% had thoughts of suicide just because of the debt load that they're carrying. So can you imagine, because you don't see a way out of your debt, you don't see a way out of, getting ahead in life, you just feel like you're falling behind because of your debt, because of choices, because of the lack of resources that you have, you're considering killing yourself. I just read an article of a woman because she got COVID, and because she got COVID, and then she couldn't go back to work, and now she's asking to go through assisted death because she can't work, and she knows that in a few years her money is going to run out, and she doesn't see the possibility of her being able to be financially sound when she cannot work anymore. But if she had, disability insurance, she wouldn't be contemplating assisted suicide, because she's considering it because she feels like her body's breaking down, but she also feels like she has no other resources to tap into to help pay for her rent. So when we talk about the long-term effects of the lack of financial literacy, they are profound. They are profound. So that's why we believe here at Kiddonomics that knowledge is power, and early financial literacy just leads to greater financial success. And Kiddonomics to us is a launching pad to financial literacy power. Any questions there? Any? I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second so that you guys are not focusing on that. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. So for us here at Kiddonomics, I started Kiddonomics a few years ago with my 11. She's now 11. When we started, she was younger. I think she was 8 or 9 when we started Kiddonomics. But Kiddonomics is here to help kids ages 8 to 13 learn financial literacy skills to help set them on the right path towards a successful financial future and to have a healthier relationship towards finances, because we believe the earlier that you start, especially before a person has a relationship towards money, such as kids, younger kids, before they get their first job and they start working their own money, or they're able to like go to the store and start buying things that they want to buy for themselves, before they develop a relationship with money, let's set their mindset on the right path to have a successful financial future. And that's what we do weekly here at Kiddonomics. We have a weekly session every Friday. And on Kiddonomics, we have a different expert come on, and they will teach the kids everything, like we've discussed, everything from Bitcoins to, cryptocurrency, to savings and budgeting, to mortgages, to real estate. Like we even had a session on how to buy real estate in Orlando and what the kids could do with that. And so we've had, like, if you check out our YouTube channel, we've had everything from, we have over 80 videos there because we are there almost every Friday from 5 to 6 over Zoom. So it is free for anybody around the world to sign up, which has been phenomenal. Our reception for Kiddonomics has been absolutely amazing. We have over 600 kids registered with Kiddonomics. We have kids that join us from all over the world. England, a lot come from the US, which is amazing. We've had kids from England, we've had kids from France, Italy, Germany, different countries in Africa. We've had the UAE one time. So we've had kids join us from all around the world. And although most of the information that we do focus on is related to things that we can do here in Canada, the core concept of what you can learn is transferable to any country. Like when I always give tips to start out with our kids, especially if you're new to financial literacy and you're new to Kiddonomics. I always say to start out with these 3 videos, which is assets versus liabilities. That's transferable across any platform, any country. Assets versus liabilities. Then we have one called savings and another one called budgeting. Start out with those core 3 videos, because those core 3 will give you a good foundation. And then of course you can jump around to whatever topic that interests your child, right? But the number one question that I do get asked is, how did we start out our kids with learning financial literacy? How do you broker this topic, right? Because what I tell people is kids learn through osmosis. They learn through seeing us, right? They start developing a relationship with money. They start developing a relationship with money through what they see their parents do and don't do, okay? So where you think your kids are not paying attention to us, they are. So one of the tips that I always say to start out with our kids learning financial literacy is when you take them to the grocery store, this is because the kids always come with you, right? Especially if you're a mom or you're the dad, right? The kids come with you to the grocery store. And you start with a list and say, hey, this is the list of what we're looking for. And then you ask them to find these items that are on the list and the price that goes along with the list, right? So you put that in and you say, okay, this is what we're looking for. And here is our budget. Our budget is to just spend $70, 70. And you tell them, because this is how much we have for the grocery store and we need to spend this, we only have $70 to spend. So what it does do for them is to teach them about choices, because you go to the grocery store and of course they start, oh, I want this and I want this and I want this. And now your budget is like out the window, right? So, but if you give them the list, they become active in the buying power of what you're doing. They become a participant and not just a spectator. Chiquita, you have a question? Please go ahead.
I do. I had a question about, you said that you started the company with your daughter,
Yeah.
and I wanted to find out about your business structure there in Canada. Are you allowed, is your daughter like a owner of Kittynomics with you, or how does that work?
Yeah, so she's currently not an owner yet until she turns age of majority. Then I would amalgamate some shares over to my daughter. But what she does do is she's an active participant within Kittynomics. So every week, if you check out our videos, you'll see that she's there every single week. She's learning along with all the other kids that join Kittynomics weekly. We talk about what the kids would like to learn. So we talk about topics. I talked with her about, which experts should come on to Kittynomics, what should we be learning. So these are the things that, as she's growing and she's learning how to navigate, how to run a business, she's learning these things with me she's alongside of me, and we're doing it together. To the point where this year she started her own candy business, which was amazing, called Cloudy Cans. She has a partner in her business, and they started selling candy, which is amazing because we've learned through that. She's learned distribution, she's learned accounting. So she's learned, okay, so we have it's called Dollarama over here. So we go to the dollar store, she buys the candy that she needs to buy. She knows her margins. So we say, okay, our margins is you buy a candy for $1, you're able to sell it back for $2. She knows what her limit is. They go with a budget. So she's learned accounting, she's learned how to market, she's learned customer service because she has to be able to sell these candies. So she's translated the things that she's learned on Kittynomics into her own business called Cloudy Cans. And while she's doing that, she's also learning these things on what to do with our business through Kittynomics.
Thank you.
So what I do say for parents is, I find that, especially in certain cultures, you don't want to discuss certain things with your kids. You're like, no, you're a child. This is grown-up stuff. Never mind. But the thing is that the kids want to learn. What I've learned on Kittynomics is that the topics that we discuss, like we discuss mortgages, how to get a mortgage, how we've discussed how to buy homes, how to rent out homes, like investment, how to invest in properties, how to invest in buying buildings. So you're going from residential to like Monopoly is really big. We love Monopoly on Kittynomics because it's showing you how to grow your money and your real estate. So we talk about that on Kittynomics. So we've had people that talk about, how to buy a commercial building, how to buy your own apartment building, go from owning a single house or maybe just a condo. You start there, but you grow just like Monopoly. You get all these little houses and you start building on top of that. That's what we teach on Kittynomics, and we have experts that come on and we show you these things, because the thing is that parents think that kids don't want to learn about these things. And what our Kittynomics community and kids have shown parents is that these kids do want to learn about these things. They do want to learn how to grow their real estate. I've had, like we did one, as I said, that we how to buy real estate. Susan, I'm going to get to you. I'm going to finish this thought and then I'm going to get to you. How to buy real estate in Orlando.
Stacey, Robert also has his hand up.
Yes. A question? Sorry, I can't see.
Yes.
Okay. Oh,
no,
yeah,
his hand is up. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Susan and Robert, I'll get to you in a second. I'll just finish this thought and then I'll get to you two in a second. We were showing them, okay, if you buy a house, you can still go to Disney, but you're going to get rental income. And the kids were like, yeah, so I'm going to buy my house as soon as I turn 13, and I'm going to rent it out to my parents. How much rent can I charge my parents for when we go to Disney? Like, these are the things. The questions that we get asked on Kittynomics, they are so insightful because these kids want to learn. They need to learn. And where you think that these topics are too big for them, or they're too young to learn these topics, the Kittynomics community has proven that they're never too young to start learning financial literacy. Susan, please go ahead, and then Robert, I'll definitely get to you.
Having been in the retail banking industry for years,
Yes.
okay, prior to ATMs and Zelle and everything else, this is something that I can't tell you how many high school seniors going off to college in the fall came in, they had to open a checking account. They did not know how to write a check.
Mhm.
They did not know how to balance a checkbook.
Mhm.
They did not even know what a check was. And then with the advent of keeping records, because they had no concept of that with, well, ATM cards, and they think that there's unlimited money behind the card and everything else. This is something I've said for years, because like I said, I was in the retail banking industry for years, and when checks were the thing, and at the beginning of the ATM card, and ATM cards weren't universal, and you had to write a check, the old fashioned right, you don't even know about that, Stacy, but the old fashioned right.
I was in the banking world, I was in the banking world for years too, so
You know what I'm saying? But writing a check to cash and going to cash the check, because ATMs were not what they are today. And then when the credit card people were all over campuses giving you your first credit card and budgeting, it was, can't tell you how many people I taught that, and everything else when I'm sitting at my desk opening these accounts for them. And that's another thing in the US that the especially New Jersey bankers and the bankers associations do express financial literacy and do not express, that's not the word, do enhance and do things with the programs and bringing it into even lower schools earlier in the year or later in the year, not just the 6th to 8th graders, but to introduce it to them. And to the banking associations are also very well involved in this, because we weren't taught. My mother taught me, but not everybody's parents did. And I had to keep a check, and how to keep the check, which I still do to this day. I'm probably one of the few that still does, how to keep the check register and how to put debits and credits in. And it's something that needs to be taught. And I'm not, and yes, the mortgages in the house and everything else, and the buying and the cryptocurrency, I absolutely agree with you. But we need to start with the basics too, because they get these cards and they just figure, the old joke, how can I be overdrawn? I still have checks.
Yes.
Absolutely
right, and that's exactly what Kiddonomics is for. I say that Kiddonomics is,
I'm not trying to say that Kiddonomics is, but I'm saying you need to, on some levels, and I'm not saying Kiddonomics, I'm saying the schools and everything else.
Yes,
Yes.
I definitely agree. I see a question there, is Kiddonomics in schools? And so we've been trying to work with different school boards to get Kiddonomics into schools. Our videos are accessible for free, of course, on YouTube. That helps guide kids. But I always say this: if you can teach kids about Shakespeare, which to me is not relevant, but hey, I'm not saying you shouldn't learn Shakespeare. But if you're going to teach kids about Shakespeare, you should be teaching kids what is credit, how to save, how to budget, what is an assets versus liabilities. You're sending our kids off so ill-prepared and ill-equipped to manage life in finances, which is your number one thing, because it affects every part of your life, down to what you eat. How many people can shop at Whole Foods? I don't know if you guys have Whole Foods over there, but Whole Foods is so expensive. Yes, that's the healthier choice. Or do you eat at McDonald's because that is the cheaper choice, and that is within your budget? So that's where I say financial literacy affects every single part of your life. So if we are not taking our kids and breaking it down to our kids so that they can start making healthier and more educated decisions in their choices in life, so that they can have a better relationship and better outcome when it comes to a successful financial future. And that's what we want. That's what we say every week, that we want for every kid around the world. We want every kid to have a successful financial future. And that starts out with learning the very basics. And like I said, that's why I said it's for Kiddonomics. Please start out with
Excuse
watching
me, Stacy.
the assets versus liabilities.
We're coming near the end, and we have a few more questions. Bob.
Okay, sorry, Robert, you had a question?
And we also have Gail who would like to ask a question.
Absolutely. Robert, do you wanna
Yes, Stacy. By the way, I love Toronto. I've been there many times. Yeah.
Toronto's great.
Stacy, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you your mission of your business and the plan is sound, and it does focus on the next generation. But as a behavioral counselor, I know that judging from all the statistics you gave us about the poverty level in Canada and such, I know it is very, very difficult for you not to emotionally get yourself bogged down into trying to fix the problems of today and keep yourself focused on the future generation. And I'm wondering, as a behavioral counselor, I've dealt with many profit and nonprofit leaders, executives, and they all have different methods of doing this. What is your method? I'm curious of keeping yourself focused on the next generation and not getting into the briar patch of today's problems.
That's a very, very good question. And I always tell people is to find out your why. Why are you doing this? And why is, to me, like financial literacy for kids is my passion. But it's also my passion because I got 3 little kids now. And so I have kids, their ages 11, 5, and I also have a now 10-month-old. She turned 10 months yesterday. So yay for that. And so my thing is, my kids, I'm not just doing this for what I truly believe is for every kid around the world, but I'm especially doing it for my kids. I want my kids to make a different choices and be more educated as they get older, as they grow, because I know what it's like to go through life with the lack of financial literacy. I was that kid that went to university and knew nothing about credit cards. I've worked since I was 11 years old. I've always had a job. Since I was 11 years old, I started delivering papers. Not once did anybody tell me about how to, how to save, how to spend, how to budget, what is it, assets versus, I didn't have any of those things. I'm not blaming anybody, but it wasn't taught in schools. And I know that my mother believed that, I send you to school, schools are supposed to teach you these things, but it wasn't taught in schools when I was growing up. So I made very poor financial decisions early on in my life. And because I did not know. And if I knew what I knew back then, what I knew back then, I would have made better decisions. And I want that for my kids. And I want that to be the foundation for them as they get older. And so if this can be for my kids, why can't it be for every kid out there? Why can't we, as a society, say to ourselves, if we know better, we do better. And to do better is education. Our kids need to be educated on the things that really matter. And finances is the things that really matter. We talk about, now these kids millennials are talking about adulting 101. They don't know what that is. What is adulting? How do you wash your clothes, and how do you, just the simple things, because we've removed a lot of these things that we need in life out of the school system. And so we need these things. So you know what, if Kiddonomics can help, what I say is Kiddonomics is the bridge to not just financial literacy and how to build generational wealth, but it's the gap, it's the bridge that we talk about education. And that's where, to me, is the most important thing. Just because you can pass on kids your money, it doesn't mean that they're going to know what to do with your money.
Sorry, Stacy. We
Thank you,
need to wrap it up, but we have one more question. Gail.
Okay, Hi, Stacy. I love your
Okay.
presentation. In New Jersey, it's a government mandate that kids get financial literacy classes in high school. They have to take those courses to graduate. I'm a financial literacy teacher in high school. So recently, at the end of last year, we were mandated that in our lesson plans of financial literacy and otherwise, that we have to incorporate the Holocaust law, climate change, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and LGBTQ plus and disability awareness. Are those things that are mandated in Canada? And if so, are you incorporating those in your school?
So no, we don't have, it's not mandated. Canada, the government has adopted, they call it personal finance. It's not called financial literacy per se, but it's called personal finance. They just started it, except that it hasn't really rolled out yet. They have in high schools started more financial literacy type courses, so that the kids, as kids, are graduating, they have more literacy on it. But they're not, these are things, what the LGBTQ, none of that is a mandate, as far as I know, here in Toronto. Now, remember, we have different school boards because we have different provinces. So I'm just talking about Ontario province.
Charlotte has her hand raised.
Hi, Charlotte. You're on mute.
Charlotte, you're muted.
You're muted.
I'm unmuted now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Good, it said so. If you're not a Rotary member, I'm urging you to become a Rotary member, because I was in Toronto a few years ago when they had the international, I don't know, 40,000, 60,000 people were in Toronto for it. Because what you're talking about, you could make a core program, certainly countrywide, but possibly internationally, with the resources, because you're speaking truth to power. It applies to any country, any place, and you're naming it Kiddonomics is brilliant. It's marketable already. So go for it and we'll help you here.
Oh, that's amazing. So yeah, so Kiddonomics has been trademarked in Canada, and we are trademarking. Our goal is to build a global platform. My goal is to have a version of Kiddonomics in every country, because whereas there's some things that are just relatable to Canada, but there's things that are going to be just relatable to the States or to New Zealand or to, Kenya, and so every child should have access to a platform that that is dedicated to financial literacy, dedicated to them learning what they can do in their country, but then what they can do in other countries. So if you're moving from Kenya to the US, and you want to learn about credit cards. How does credit cards work in the US? I don't know. How does credit cards work in Italy? I don't know. How do you save for a house? Is there savings? Is there, what is an asset? What do they consider an asset in Italy or wherever it is that you are growing up in, or if you're thinking about moving to? We would love to have a platform worldwide that establishes that for every person, really, because like I said, financial literacy is a human rights issue. So thank you so much, Charlotte. We are working on it. I am working on it. So any support or any words of encouragement, I am definitely here for it. And that's our goal. So, right now we're on that path.
Thank you so much, Stacy, for this amazing presentation. I wish we had more time to go in more in depth, but I'm pretty sure we will have you again, and we will be hearing more from you.